Hey, podcast listener, even if you are alone in your entrepreneurial pursuit, know that today, right now in your earbuds, you are joined by thousands of entrepreneurs all around the globe seeking to do the same thing you are. If you want to know more about this program or this podcast, or want to get barraged by a lot of annoying pop-ups, check out our website, lifestylebusinesspodcast.com.
Yeah, buddy. Happy Thursday morning, everybody. This is the Lifestyle Business Podcast. As you expected, I hope this is where we believe building a business is the best way to create more personal freedom and opportunity in your life. Today, I'm joined, as is per the usual, by my captain, my co-host, a man whose internal company policy emails have been licensed as content for the upcoming corporate thriller, 50 Shades of Green. Welcome to the program, Ian. How you doing, buddy?
That's pretty funny. I'm doing okay, man. I'm back in the States. How about you?
I'm in Chiang. As you can hear, my voice is a bit gruff. That's because I've been sucking on tailpipe for the last couple of days, man. This place is particulate, a little bit smoggy at rush hour, and that's precisely when I decided to do a walking tour of the city.
Yeah, buddy. Being back here in California, the skies are always blue, and I think about these poor auto manufacturers pulling out their hair every couple of years. The EPA is, banging on them, trying to get their standards higher and higher, and I'm actually thankful for that.
If you guys stick around to the end of the episode, Ian and I are going to talk about our theories on wealth, building assets, and how that relates to entrepreneurship and lifestyle business. So stick around for that. This show got 5 stars on iTunes, Ian. You pumped about that? Sarah said, listening to Dan and Ian has been a huge help in getting my business off the ground. I listen every day on my walk to and from work, and now I've left my job. You guys keep me inspired, always entertaining, and always helpful. Thank you so much, Sarah, and congrats on leaving that job. We're going to talk a little bit about that today. You pumped about that?
Awesome.
All right. We got a question from Ryan Higgins, called in all the way from Qatar, from QatarExpat.com.
Is it Qatar or Qatar?
Qatar. Let's say Qatar.
Qatar.
It wouldn't be the Lifestyle Business Podcast if I didn't totally mangle some pronunciation. All right, let's listen to that call.
Hey, Dan and Ian. Great work on the podcast. I really enjoy listening to all the valuable resources you guys share on a weekly basis. Please keep it up. I've got 2 quick questions for you. Just a bit about what I'm doing. I'm trying to establish a social network. This is my first social network ever, so it's sort of a new challenge for me. The site is QatarExpat.com. It's basically a social network for expatriates living here in Qatar. And basically, I'm having trouble getting some traction in terms of user numbers to the site. So the site's been around for about 3 months, and I've tried 4 ways to kind of get traffic to come. I've been blogging on the site. I have Google AdWords, so I'm getting some inbound clicks that way. I've got a bit of a Facebook presence, which has been sort of helpful, not as helpful as I would have liked it to be. And I've been attending networking evenings here in Qatar with business cards, trying to kind of stir up a bit of a buzz that way. And despite doing those 4 things, I've found that the traffic really isn't growing as quickly as I'd like to, or as quickly as I need it to, really, because if it continues like this, it's going to take a really long time for the site to get anywhere. Thanks a lot, guys. Good luck with the work, and have a great year.
Hey, Ryan, man, thanks so much for listening to the show and for giving us a ring. This reminded me of a story from our recent conference, which Ian Borders was giving a talk, and someone asked him a question. They said, what if I'm having a problem convincing a joint venture partner to join up with my launch? And I was expecting Ian to say something like a clever tip that you could trick somebody into joining up with you or whatever. And his response was so cool. He said, look, if you're having trouble convincing one person to get on board with your product or service, good luck with going out to a broader audience. And Ryan,
I think that's a really good point.
Ryan, when we took a look at what you're doing here, the fundamental issue is that you don't have a traffic problem. You have a value proposition problem. It's not clear what's going on at your site.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think, so what it looks like here, Ryan, is that you got a bunch of advertisements from what might be local businesses. And so they're paying ad space, I assume. And so what you're trying to do is figure out a way to drive traffic to the site to keep those advertisers happy. And I think that's probably only going to work in the short term. I think probably these advertisers are going to stop paying, assuming you don't drive traffic to the site. And that's essentially why you're trying to drive traffic to the site, but I don't think that's the right strategy. I think what you should try and do here, Ryan, is actually create valuable content. When I go to this site, I don't see any content. I don't know anything about this site. I don't know what it's about. So start to have an angle, Ryan. Start to develop a personality around Qatar expats and figure out what that might be. And then I think that you're not going to have angry advertisers. You're going to have happy advertisers because they're going to be targeted towards your audience.
Yeah, and here's
so
the thing.
Ryan,
Here's
get
the
started
thing.
on building some content.
Don't go getting off on a blogging warpath, though. You want to create content that's focused around where Qatar expats are spending money. That's I think the big thing, right? You want to bring in where is it that people are spending money, because that's where you're going to create this great relationship between users and the advertisers. And Ryan, this is the type of angle that can eventually build up to a broader platform. Where say you had, thousands of users interacting every day, then you might be able to, pull off the low friction business model. But what Ian's saying is at the beginning, you need a higher friction business model, like generating leads for people that are looking to buy real estate in Qatar, stuff like that. Would you agree with that, Ian? What do you think about real estate?
I would agree with that. Yeah.
That works. All right. So, hey, Ryan, thanks for calling in, man. And good luck with the site. And when you come up with a value proposition, or when you figure out where the money is, let us know. We want to follow up on it and take a look. All right. Today in the meat and potatoes, we got a doozy, Ian. We're going to talk about generating wealth and reconsidering retirement for entrepreneurs. We got a lot of questions about the implications of entrepreneurship and lifestyle business on retirement and wealth. And well, first off, let's just go to a call from our friend Joel Runyon and hear what he's got to say about it.
What do you guys think about retirement accounts? A lot of my friends are CPAs. They got the full-time careers. They're going to be there for the next 40 years. They're investing pretty heavily in their retirement accounts. I quit my job in December. I've been working on my business for a while. I'm maxing out my Roth IRAs. But beyond that, I'm not doing very much on a retirement basis. So I'm focusing mostly on my businesses. But what are your guys' opinion on retirement in general? I think that's an interesting topic. And then also, what are your contributions to your different accounts, and which ones do you have? So I'd love to hear you guys answer that question. Thanks.
Hey, Joel, thanks for the ring, man. And thanks for continuing to support what we're doing here on the podcast. We're going to get a little bit into the whole IRA and 401k thing. But I think it's great to make max contributions. Ian and I don't have too hard of opinions about this. I think our opinions are a little bit more philosophical. In particular, Joel, you don't have a job, but if any of you out there have employee matching programs, a lot of those are going the way of the dodo after 2008. But if you still got that, obviously, you're going to want to get that employer matching. But Ian, do you have any really strong opinions about retirement contributions? I'm kind of like, yeah, man, go for it. Save all you can.
Yeah, save as much as you can, especially if your employer is matching your contributions. Man, you would be an idiot not to max out on that, I think. But yeah, I think we do have more philosophical points on this topic. We were thinking about doing this episode a couple of weeks ago when we asked a bunch of the tropical MBAers, what does wealth mean to you? And not one of them said money. And I think that's the case for us too, man. I look at retirement and wealth accumulation and things like that, and the reason I became an entrepreneur in the first place was because I wanted to own my time. I think for me and you, time is the most valuable. Is the most valuable thing that we can have. It's not necessarily money. And so, I look at retirement and I think time, and I look at entrepreneurship and I think time. Time is the most important.
But we're barking up the right tree here, and Joel's getting us heading in the right direction. We got a great question from listener Tim, who said, you guys constantly talk about ideal life costing and dreamlines. However, what about this wealth accumulation issue? Because Ian, Tim could agree with you and say, sure, Ian, kumbaya, buddy. You got your time. That's great. But what happens when you're broke and you're 50 and you can't, or you're 60, you're 70, and then you have got kids that want to go to college? You're screwed, buddy. Well done on the time thing. And I think what Tim is challenging us, and he's saying, the guy who throws away that 6-figure per year job in order to live like a bum in Southeast Asia and sell cheap Chinese crap online, he's talking about you, buddy.
Yeah, he
I
is.
think I'm the bum. You're the cheap Chinese crap. That person might not have a nest egg or a plan for owning assets that serve as a backup plan and retirement income. To Tim's point, I think it's something important for the movement of lifestyle business, entrepreneurship, sort of lifestyle design, all that, to speak to this point. Because this is the tree that we're barking up. We're entrepreneurs. We're trying to generate wealth. So let's speak to it. Let's talk about our perspective on this issue. And thanks, Tim, for challenging us to do this. Okay, so first things first. Fundamentally, we believe entrepreneurship is about wealth generation and management. So the whole backdrop to this conversation, like when you make that move to quit your job and become an entrepreneur, you're raising your hand. You're not saying like, I primarily want to be a bum, or I primarily want to sell cat furniture or have an e-commerce site. You're primarily saying, I want to take control of wealth generation and management in my life. I want to get good at this. Because, here's Ian. What's the contra example? It's the person who has the job and peels off the savings and puts it into other wealth managers' hands. So that's bonds, that's stocks, that might be mortgages, which are vehicles created by banks and stuff. And so it's like, that's what my boy MJ DeMarco would call the slow lane, right? Because you're doing one thing your whole life, which is jobbing, and then you're giving the wealth into somebody else, like your fund manager. Well, MJ DeMarco would say, look where the money is. That's the fast lane. It's the guys who's running the funds. It's the guys who's starting the business. Those are the guys who are actually generating the real wealth.
Essentially what you're saying here is that as an entrepreneur, you can basically control the whole funnel, right? So, as a jobber, you might have a really good job in the States and you might be making $100,000 a year, but that you can't control that, right? I mean, you're tapped out, or you're topped out.
Here's the fundamental thing. You're betting on yourself versus betting on financial instruments at a very small scale that you have very little clue about how they work. Remember back in the day when everybody was buying $400,000 homes on $40,000 salaries, and it was like you make 11% in mutual mortgage. Remember, or mutual funds? Yeah. That was like, that was kind of like my early professional dogma. Is like, it was, you go to the interest calculator online and you just put 11% in there like a boss. Well, not so much anymore. Let's talk a little bit about this compound interest issue, Ian, because I think it's really important to take a look at. So we're going to do a little compound interest case study. Are you down for it, E?
I'm ready.
All right. Let's say you make that $100,000 a year back in the States. Now, Ian, you're a pretty frugal guy. What would be a reasonable percentage that you might be able to save off of that?
Let's just give them the benefit of the doubt. Let's just say that you're able to save post-tax 20%.
Ooh,
so
wait,
I think post-tax 20% would be something like 13 grand. Maybe.
Yeah, those are some nasty two words, buddy. Post-tax, right? So we're talking about, if you make 100 grand a year, you don't make 100 grand a year. That's the punchline of that, right? So if you save 20% of your take-home salary, you're talking about 13 grand. Not too shabby, by the way, and a huge achievement for somebody living in a highly leveraged Western culture, like in kind of like borrowing culture, right? And we're basically assuming that like nobody's going to get sick, like grandma's not going to get sick, and you're not going to have to be involved in that anyway. No tragedies come up, college doesn't come up, whatever. We're just talking about 13 grand a year, right? Putting it away. If you did that for 20 years, continuing to make 100 grand for 20 years, what are you going to have at the end of the year? Do you have the number pulled up, E?
I think you're probably going to have around, $260,000 or so?
No, you're going to have $548,000.
Oh, with interest, correct.
That's
okay.
Right. So you're going to have, according to my interest calculator, you're going to have $548,000 if you have a job for 20 years. So now do a thought experiment. Imagine a job for 20 years. Imagine making $100,000 consistently every year and saving 20% of it. At the end of your 20-year career, $548,000. Not too shabby.
Like what? Like 6% or something like that?
That's at 6%. So we're going to do both calculations at 6%. Now, let's contrast that with what I would like to call, that would be the excellent Good Samaritan job scenario. Like that's better than...
bad.
It's not bad, but it's better than anybody in my family has ever managed to pull off, right?
Okay.
Because that's tough to keep $100,000 going for 20 years, man. And it's tough to keep the 20% savings rate going. So that's a pretty good case. Let's compare that with the bad entrepreneur, the bad case of entrepreneur. Let's say for 10 years, you're a bum and you don't save anything. Like you, Ian, right? Bum.
Right.
Like absolutely awful. Then, after 10 years of apprenticeship, training, tropical MBA intern, whatever it is, you start socking away 30 grand a year for the next 10 years. which if you spend 10 years investing in learning how to grow small businesses and you're not socking 30 grand a year, that would be like, it's not that big of a thing if you're in the game for 10 years. It's pretty normal.
Yeah.
Let's say after the course of that 10 years, so this is like on your 20th year, you're like, I'm done. I'm tired of growing a business. I'm going to sell it. And it sucks, right? So they're only going to give you $100,000 for that. And by the way, if we're going to do the basic like 3 times earnings calculation, if you're managing to save 30%, your business will be way more than 100 grand. But like we're doing the bad entrepreneurial scenario, right? So if you follow this bad entrepreneur case study, at the end of your 20 years, you're going to have just over what the employee would have. You're going to have $600,000, right? But
Okay.
I basically say this to like, the idea here is that like this is a pretty bad case for a scenario. You're talking about like you're an entrepreneur for 10 years and you don't save anything, 0. And still at the end of the day, you kind of have a mediocre exit from everything that you've built after the course of 20 years. And you're still flat freaking equal with the stellar, standout, good Samaritan employee. And my point here is like, okay, so we're all even, right? No, we're not even close to even, because one person did what they wanted to do for 20 years of their life. We don't
Yeah, buddy.
live
So
that.
you got to be a bum and hang out in Southeast Asia. You got to travel to Chiang Mai. You got to live in 20 different countries. You got to live and wake up when you want on whatever beach you want. You got to be a bad entrepreneur, although you did learn some things. And you got the same amount as the guy that worked for 20 years at a job.
Let's move on to number 3 point, which is the wealth of an entrepreneur, the true wealth of an entrepreneur. And this is something that's like a little bit more philosophical, Ian, which is that it's in going your own way and making a dent in the world. Like asking other people to vote on you with their wallets, to join you, to support you in your endeavor. This is a little bit like what you were saying, Ian, when we asked the Tropical MBA people, like, what's wealth to you? It all came down to things like personal freedom and autonomy and purpose. People weren't saying like, I really got to make sure that I have all this money.
Yeah, I think it's easy for us to say, as relatively young guys, like it's not important to have money right now, man. It's cool when I'm 50, I'll figure it out. So I think that's the real risk here, is that a lot of people might say in a job like, well, you're not thinking about your future. You're not thinking about what's to come down the pike. But I think really we are thinking about it, and I think that's why we work so hard every day, is to build up these assets that we are building right now, in hopes of retiring eventually. I mean, I want to retire, don't you?
I don't think about retirement, to be honest. I think about asset generation and accumulation, just like Tim's asking, It's difficult for me to imagine waking up in the morning and not wanting to be industrious in some way or another. It's like that classic Tim Ferriss argument that the types of people who end up generating the types of, those incomes that allow them to have a big fat retirement don't want it. You don't want to retire. I mean, that's no fun. But here, I got a direct argument to your point, Ian, which is, and I think this is an important thing, like the whole bum in Southeast Asia thing and the whole like putting up affiliate sites or whatever, like this lifestyle design movement and micro entrepreneurship movement, lifestyle business, whatever you want to call it, it's happening in the context of entrepreneurship. So like I moved to the Philippines for Drupal developers, not palm trees, right? And the internet entrepreneurs that are flocking here to places like Chiang Mai, they're not coming here to bum out. Like I know these people, like I sat in a coffee shop all day long with them. They are building assets, right? So like the cool thing about the opportunities presented to us by like lifestyle design stuff is for 15 grand, you can come here and build assets for a year. When you look at like over the course of a working career, you might have 30 good working years in you, 20, it depends how you count, whatever. You can buy back 1 year for 15 grand. That's a fantastic investment. Your thoughts?
I agree 100%. I think it's fun to just toss the stuff around between us, and this is something that we think about all the time. But yeah, I agree 100% on this. $15,000 to live in Chiang Mai for a year is as we've said in the past, way more valuable than the $100,000 a year, because you're not working on what you want to work on. You're not building skills out that directly correlate to an income that you can control. So I would take the $15,000 in Chiang Mai any year of my life.
Yeah, I was just talking to a guy down at the restaurant who, he makes a good live, like he gets by, right, in this kind of environment. But he was just talking about, something came up where he's got an opportunity to make a 20 grand sale this weekend. And it made sense that those kinds of opportunities are going to come his way, and they're going to continue to come his way in higher velocity. And I just thought back to my parents. You were talking about, Ian, like, well, what if something comes up, like your kid wants to go to college and it screws up your whole savings plan? Well, people that have jobs, they have a lot less flexibility in what their income is. And so again,
that's one of the things about having a job is that you're on a fixed income plan. Like that's it. Right.
That's it.
So like if you want to like go out and buy a brand new Mercedes and you don't make enough in your $100,000 a year job to do that, like there's no options for you unless you want to start selling drugs on the weekend, right? Like what other options do you have? You work 60 hours a week and you make $100,000 a year. Where do you go from there?
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you where you go. You got to start a business to earn more. I mean, you're essentially in a job, you're trading your time for money. In entrepreneurship, you're not trading your time for money. And so that means that you can have a lot more streams of income than you can with a job.
And you got to believe in these trajectories too. So like the one trajectory that in our culture is like seems so easy to believe in is like this Warren Buffett investment plan, right? Which is like the compounding interest thing and like saving your money and putting it into stocks and stuff. And 20 years later. But why doesn't everybody just automatically believe in the Mark Cuban self-investment plan? I think you have to believe in your ability to improve over time. And Mark Cuban talks like about this brilliantly on his blog, blogmaverick.com. Which is this idea of like, maybe it's because people have so much incentive to sell you on this investment plan, right? And I think you should do that anyway, right? But you got to do the other part, which is invest in yourself. If your game plan is to give yourself away for 20 years to somebody else's idea of how you should spend your time and not own that, I don't think that's a good long-term investment in yourself. And so I think it starts with you, and it starts with how you're going to spend your time and what trajectory that puts you on. So we've seen a lot of this happen in real person. So Ian, I think in real life, I think it might make sense to talk a little bit about the time frames, right? Because everybody's when you go to the compound interest thing, it's pretty easy to see the time frames there. And by the way, with this whole time frames thing, it's like, how many guys do you know that just got crushed in 2008?
Yeah, I think a lot of people got crushed, especially people that had their money in the stock market.
I know guys like that, guys that you're trying to retire and instead they're like, now they're trying to get jobs and stuff. And it's like, it sucks because those are the guys that are getting screwed because they've got a little bit of money, right? But they don't know how to invest because they work jobs their whole lives. That's a bummer. But let's talk about the time frames thing. What I'm seeing, Ian, is that ballpark about a decade to get off the ground with this stuff. Which is a lot less, by the way, than the retirement game plan is. But we're still talking about some pretty massive and some intimidating time frames. So I'm seeing it taking about 5 years of skill building, and that's like 5 years of working in a business environment. And some of these cats, man, some of these young kids with the internet and everything, they're doing it faster than that. But I don't think it hurts to be a little bit conservative with this, and also, get yourself into some environments that are going to be sustainable for you. So like, you can't just go work for some job or some business that you hate, because you gotta stick with that skill set for 5 years. And the other thing that I'm seeing, Ian, is that it's taken about 5 years of building businesses. Like a lot of people, it was kind of interesting to see a lot of the ballers. What separates the ballers, like the Chris Duckers from the guys that are just getting started, is time, right? A lot of the people in our group got started around 2007 because it might be the case that that's when the 4-Hour Workweek came out. But a lot of those guys that started their businesses, started invoicing in 2007, are having 7-figure businesses. Many of them multi-7-figure businesses. And I think that's fascinating, right? Because I was talking to Derek Sivers and looking at what he did with his business. Well, he worked every day for 10 years at it. And then after 10 years, he sold it for $22 million. And that kind of makes sense to me, right? Like I was thinking about our business, Ian. We've been at it for 5 years. Do you think it's possible we could sell it for $22 million 5 years from now? I think that's a real possibility. I don't think it's not like gambling, is it? It's like, it's possible we could have a plan to do that.
This doesn't really have to do with time frames. I'm gonna go off the path here a little bit, but it does have to do with entrepreneurship and building real wealth. And so I don't know if I ever told you this, but a couple years ago, I'm really into auto racing, and I want to race cars, I want to race motorcycles, I want to have everything to do with that. I love it. I grew up in that environment, and it's something that I aspire to do in the future more. One of the largest sanctioning bodies is the SCCA, Sports Car Club of America. And every year they have their national competition. And so one year I went down the list of all the people that had won at the runoffs at the national competition, and I Googled each one of their names, and I think I did this for like 20 people. Every single person that I Googled owned a business. And the reason is because auto racing is extremely expensive. Some of these guys spend $100,000, $200,000 just on their car, and then you've got the expenses of the race and the travel and all this stuff. And so, the reason I did it back in the day was I was trying to figure out who are these guys that can afford this, and all of them were small business owners.
Yeah, and so this is our final point, Ian. Let's round it off with this, which is, I think people are still going to say, like, what if I fail? And, because the consequences could be dire. And how do you evaluate your chances? Your story, it echoes the story that James Schramko was telling us the other day, which is that, he was working at the Mercedes dealership, and everybody who bought a freaking Mercedes was a small business owner. There was a couple things. I think the tough thing is, Ian, is like, there's certain scripts that we all believe in. Like the doctor script is one that people feel real comfortable about, right? You look at doctors and you say, well, if they do residency and if they do, med school and all this kind of stuff, like here's basically where that ends up. Well, why don't we feel that way about small business entrepreneurs? I mean, part of what I think I would like to do, with things like the Dynamite Circle and things like this podcast is show people that if you commit to it, it's a major time investment. We're talking about, 5-10 years here. We're not talking about something that you do after work, part-time, for fun sometimes, right? I'm talking about a whole new life trajectory. But, Ian, this is where it goes, right?
Yes.
It goes to the showroom of the Mercedes dealership. It goes to, the track with the expensive cars. Like, it goes to living in foreign countries and traveling when you want. Like, that's where this stuff... And at the end of the day, I look back at that equation, Ian, of like the 20 years. It's like, and of being a part of visions that you feel proud of and that you feel like, you have some kind of ownership in versus rolling the dice on somebody else's vision.
Yeah, buddy.
And that's it. And that's all we got to say about wealth. But we want to hear what you have to say about wealth. What are your fears? What do you have questions about? We're happy to go more into detail about specific stuff here. But Tim, thanks so much for setting us off on this one. This is a really cool topic.
Yeah, buddy, I can't wait to talk more about this stuff in the coming years. This is a really fun one, and this is one that we're learning about now. So, and every day, I think we're just kind of starting to come over the top of the hill on some of this stuff. And it took us a long time to turn our heads away from that $100,000 salary too. I mean, it's not easy. It's like $100,000 today, or maybe make it in 5 years. So, it takes a while to get comfortable making that decision.
That's the whole thing. It's like it's farmer mentality. This whole entrepreneurship thing is that you're gonna be broke for a couple years. Like that's what it takes. So if you take that $100,000 right now, that's it. You're gonna make $100,000, like maybe $200,000, whatever. Like that's it forever. But if you can take that step backward and say, you know what, I believe in this path. Like I'm gonna do some due diligence here. I'm gonna look around at other entrepreneurs. I'm gonna see how their trajectory worked, and I'm gonna see how I can get a piece of that action for myself. And I'll tell you what, like. Even now, here's a weird thing. People talk about resume gaps and stuff, Ian. Do you think it would be any problem for you to go back and get a job after 5 years at this point? In terms of the hard part wouldn't be getting the job. The hard part would be sticking in the damn thing, right?
Yeah.
All
yeah,
right, so
absolutely. I don't think there's a problem if, and the guy that's looking at my resume that cares about a resume gap, I don't want to work for that guy anyways.
I look at myself, Tim, down the road, like as the guy who had that $100,000 job for 5 years. And then the guy like that I am today that goes completely bust and is at zero. You know which horse I'm jumping on? You know which guy I'm putting my money on? The guy who went through this experience for 5 years.
Booyah.
Booyah. All right, let's get moving on to just the tips. All right, well, Ian, I think I'm like a lot of people, which is that I've basically tried to become an Evernote user like 3 times, and I've bailed every time. And it's finally stuck. And there's a couple of things that have changed. Number one is I took the time to learn the software. Number two is that I bought premium right away so that it syncs with my handset. And I just want to explain to people like what I use it for. It's extremely useful for travelers because you can have all of your travel documents and all of your contact information on your handset automatically. So it used to be, you had to like depend on your 3G and like search through your Gmail. But now when I buy a plane ticket or make a hotel reservation, I just forward that in my email. I email it to my Evernote account, and I automatically label it in my travel documents, and then I can just pull it up anytime right on my handset. Super useful. It's obviously awesome for content producers, creative thinkers, for idea capture. If I'm walking down the street, I can take a picture of something or record my voice or type a note. And then when I get back to my computer, it's there waiting for me to work on. So I'm using it, Evernote text editor, for ideation and blog post generation and podcast outlines and all that kind of stuff. So, one other quick tip, just because I'm getting really pumped about it, Ian, is for those of you who are Evernote users who don't know, you can hit Control-Command-N or Control-Command-V, and that'll automatically open up either a new Evernote window or paste whatever's on your clipboard directly into Evernote. So that's my two quick tips. And my final quick tip is to make sure that you save your Evernote email address into your contacts in your Gmail account, so you can just email stuff to your Evernote account.
Nice.
So I know,
Nice.
I geek out on stuff, but I'm really enjoying Evernote, and I also think the text editor is fantastic in there, and so it's been hugely a big lifestyle upgrade for me, buddy.
Yeah, man, I've been using it for a long time. I'm not a power user, like you don't have it all synced up and all that stuff yet, but after hearing your story, I'm kind of inspired to do that.
If you spend 20 minutes to learn the software, it could change the way you do business. So it's absolutely been great for me. All right, speaking of great for me, one of my favorite bands, Ian, Two Door Cinema Club. My Lord, their debut record was off the chains. Last week, our boy Alistair, one of our top dude, cheers Alistair, man, sent me a little email reminder saying, hey, there's a new record out, Dan, and we're going to play you guys out with Next Year from the album Beacon. Absolutely love this band. Absolutely love this podcast. Hey, it's my last night in Chiang Mai, Ian. I'm flying to Bali to go write my book in November, so I'm taking November off, but not from the podcast, of course. I'll see you next Thursday morning.
Booyah.
Hey everybody, thanks for listening. Don't be shy. We've got a mailing list, lifestylebusinesspodcast.com. Go there, get yourself signed up, and we'll keep you up to date on everything.
And a booyah. Boo, boo, boo. Wait, hold up. Boo, 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 boo. Yeah.